All of us know something about this man, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln, the president, who sadly guided the nation through a tragic war. Lincoln, the speechmaker, who clearly discussed the problems of his beloved United States. And Lincoln, the storekeeper of utmost honesty. But we will show you Abe Lincoln, the boy, and the boyhood he spent as part of a pioneer family. Abe Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a log cabin. The cabin, honored as his birthplace, is now in a museum near Hodgenville, Kentucky, on the Lincoln farm. When Abe was 2 years old, the Lincoln family moved from Hodgenville to a new farm at Knob Creek, Kentucky. Here, Abe lived until he was 7. Then the family moved again, journeying a short distance to the wide Ohio River. They crossed the river by using a raft. Once across, they were in the new state of Indiana. From the Ohio River, they traveled several miles to a small community called Little Pigeon Creek. Here, the Lincolns made their new home. From the start, life on the Little Pigeon Creek farm in Indiana was hard. It was during the dead of winter that work on the new farm began. Abe Lincoln, age 7, was expected to do his chores, and he did. He helped trim logs and notch them, and he helped his father and the neighboring farmers fit the logs together to build a cabin. For the next 2 years at Little Pigeon Creek, young Abe worked long hours on the farm. He helped plow the fields where his father, Tom Lincoln, grew crops for food and money. It was this work that probably helped to develop Abraham Lincoln's great physical strength. The 9-year-old boy did many jobs on the farm at Little Pigeon Creek. He went with his older sister, Sarah, into the surrounding forest to search for wild nuts, fruits, and berries, which the Lincoln family needed as extra food. And he walked about 2 miles every day to fetch from a stream the family's supply of water. For about a year, the Lincoln children were motherless. Then came a day when Tom Lincoln told his children he would have to leave the farm for a time. He left Abe and Sarah to care for themselves and the all-important fields. Some historians think that during this time, Abe learned to make his own decisions. After all, he was now the man of the house, responsible for his sister and the care of the farm. About 3 weeks later, when Tom Lincoln returned to the farm at Little Pigeon Creek, he brought with him a new wife. Her name was Sarah Bush Lincoln. The new Mrs. Lincoln had been a widow, and she brought her own 3 children to the Lincoln farm, along with a wagon load of furniture and finery, such as the Lincoln children, Abe and Sarah, had never seen before. The new Mrs. Lincoln and her family were townfolk who brought household goods strange to the backwoods Lincoln family. Abe especially was interested by the luxury of the things he saw. Some of the books she brought fascinated him, for Abe had always had a thirst for knowledge. Almost from the first, Sarah Bush Lincoln felt drawn to this gangling boy with his gentle, kind ways. Somehow, Sarah Bush Lincoln seemed to realize that Abe was more than just a simple frontier boy. He wanted to learn and to know. From that moment on, Sarah Bush Lincoln did everything she could to see that the hard-working Abe got as much education as possible. Often she would put aside her own household work and do Abe's instead, so that the boy could be spared for a few hours to go to school. So through the kindness of his stepmother, who often did his chores, Abe received some schooling. On school days, he would walk down backwoods trails, through still, green woodlands, and past small pioneer farmhouses to a log cabin schoolhouse 1.5 miles away from home. In school, he would practice writing, do problems in arithmetic, or compose short poems, as shown on this page of his very own exercise book. But even when he couldn't attend school, Abe practiced what he knew. Some nights in the cabin with his cousin Dennis, who had come to live with the Lincolns, Abe would practice writing his name. Once, after writing his signature several times over, he called to his cousin. "Hey, Denny, look at that, will you? Abraham Lincoln. That stands for me." "Don't look a blame bit like me, does it?" Along with writing, young Abe spent most of his spare time reading. Sometimes he might read in the cabin, but more often he read outdoors. When he left for the fields in the morning, he'd take a book along. Around noon, he'd sit down under a shady tree, take out his lunch and the book, and spend his lunchtime reading. Books fascinated the 10-year-old boy, and he read all he could. He read Aesop's fables, which must have reminded him of the tall tales his father spun, tales that often taught a lesson. In the evening, by the cabin fireside, he might read Robinson Crusoe, a tale of desert island adventures, which might have made him dream of adventures of his own. He also read Pilgrim's Progress, a book of deep faith, which must have stirred the boy's religious feelings. This book, The Life of George Washington, did much to strengthen his love for his country. This early biography of Washington by Weems, Abe had borrowed from a neighbor, and he read it through in one night. When he finished, the hour was far past the boy's usual bedtime. Carelessly, he put the book in a chink between two logs and went up to bed. That night, there was a heavy rainstorm, and rain seeped in through cracks in the cabin wall, ruining the book. The next morning, Abe brought the soiled book back to the neighbor who had loaned it to him. The farmer was disappointed. Books at that time were very expensive and precious to their owners. Though Abe might have excused himself for the accident, he apologized and told the farmer he wanted to make up for ruining the book. In addition to his chores at home, he would work for the farmer. And that's what Abe did. For a couple of days, he cut the corn stalks in the farmer's field, gathering food for the livestock. It was hard work, this extra job he took on, but as a boy, he had developed a sense of complete honesty and responsibility, and a drive to work hard. These, then, were some of the events of the boyhood of Abraham Lincoln, of the Indiana years. From this boyhood, as a member of a pioneer farm family, a boyhood of near poverty, of long hours of work, and of taking every possible moment to learn, came the Abe Lincoln that all of us know. A man of knowledge, of great responsibility, of courage and honor, who became the 16th president of his beloved country the United States of America.